I am Sean Webb, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Rock Goddess, and I am rolling with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Dave Meltzer, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Zach Poitra, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, Superior Nation? Welcome back. I'm Trey Downs, and this is Your Superior Self, the podcast where I encourage you to keep an open mind towards all spirituality, all knowledge, all belief systems to kind of help you along your path to growth, to self-growth, to your superior self, whatever that looks like for you. I encourage you, and I'm on the same path. I am still trying to figure that out, and I don't think we ever will. I think we always work towards that knowledge and that growth and that expansion of self, and I get excited and fired up about the conversations that I get to have with fabulous people like today's guest, Don Long. And he is a transformational coach and an international best-selling author. And today we actually talk about his latest book, The Blueprint of God. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, I gotta have this guy on to talk about his experience. And that's what we do. We have a great, powerful conversation about his experience with God and what that looks like for him. But I mean, we get into some deep conversation about our belief systems and how they look for us. They're not necessarily, I mean, they have the foundation of traditional religion, but we also, I know for myself, I keep an open mind to other religious beliefs and spirituality theories, and I love discussing them with other people to expand my awareness, to expand my consciousness and spirituality in a way that is best suited for myself. That way I can feel the higher vibrations, the fire in your heart about what is true to yourself. And that's what I think spirituality is finding that belief system or that knowledge or that knowing that what you're encountering is of God and that it is of that higher consciousness of source, and that it feels good to you because you know it in your soul to be the truth. And a lot of people want that instantly. They don't understand the growth that it takes to get there. I'm still not there. I don't know if I ever will be there, but I am willing to take that journey and look for signs of the universe that are pointing me in the right direction that I need to go. I mean, that is what is it essentially is the journey. The path is us being pushed in a way that we have faith and we trust that it's gonna show us a better version of ourselves. And that's the path that I'm on. I'm not saying it's your path, I'm just saying it's mine, and that I am open-minded to the experiences that unfold before me. And I trust that it is the universe and God showing me the way. And we get into that a little bit more in depth in the interview, or conversation rather, because it is very good. I listened to it today for the first time. I mean, we recorded this a couple of months back, and it's really interesting. Here's a little preview of what is to come.
Greatest gift I have is being able to give my experience to other people, other humans who are still struggling with their humanity of having a spiritual experience. And what I would tell those people is just stop. Start realizing you're a spiritual, eternal being from the Creator, and you're having a human experience, and start living your life from that place of eternity first.
Oh man, that is such a powerful statement. To be able to understand the powerful being that you are, and that every moment that we experience in this life is a new moment that we can choose how we express ourselves, how we show up for that moment. You can show up in that moment happy or fearful or stressed or depressed or joyful and happy, and it's up to you. It is seriously up to you. And in that moment, as I say in this interview, is eternity. And what takes that away from us? And you might say, well, what does eternity have to do with the moment? Because in the moment, it will last forever. The only thing that takes you away from that moment, that starts making you think about different things that are going on in your life, whether they be negative or positive, is the ego, the self, the small self that points you towards the future where you're fearing what it may be coming up next, or worrying about what you need to do, or stressing about the past and what you should have done. Yeah, it's a pretty deep conversation, and I'm very excited for you guys to listen. But before we get into it, please hit me up, yoursuperiorself.com. Let me know your thoughts, and want to hear from you. You can follow me on social media, on Instagram at tdowns80 and on Twitter at downstray. Check me out. There is a Facebook group, Your Superior Self, on Facebook, if you want to follow and see some of the behind the scenes activities that are going on in my life, my journey, doing a lot of running and research, and just being a father, being the best version of myself that I could possibly be, husband, and just trying to get after it. And I'm interested in connecting with you guys and hearing what your stories are and what they consist of. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Don Long.
Hi, this is Don Long, and I'm glad to be with you guys on Your Superior Self.
Don, my man, how are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you are.
Doing well. Getting ready to get geared up and go down to the beach for a little bit of a long weekend. Kind of nervous, but with the outbreak, the second wave that's been hitting the East Coast, at least. But with that said, I'm pretty excited to get out of here.
What beach are you going to?
We're going down to Fenwick Island, down in Delaware.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Going there for a couple, 5 days or something like that, just to get out of Baltimore. I
don't blame you there. The guy who runs my CrossFit gym is from Baltimore, actually.
Oh, yeah? Where's that at?
It's down in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mm.
Yeah, so this is where I live at.
Okay. I love Raleigh.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city. We're actually going to the beach as well. We're heading down to north end of Myrtle, have a family vacation week every year around this time. So we're heading out Saturday.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So talk about your books. So you have, you're a life coach, right? Business coach, and you help others build their businesses to where it's profitable. And you've definitely are successful in that industry. And then also you have a book that is pretty spiritual, which caught my eye. Yeah. You want to go ahead and give the title of that?
Yeah, it's The Blueprint of God, the wisdom to change the world. It lies in you. And it's kind of cool. Actually, the sales book, the best-selling sales book I have actually came out of a meeting over coffee with a close friend of mine who I'd been friends with about 8 years, which was about 3 years ago. And he was starting his own business. And at that time, I still owned the company that I sold in 2019. And so I started helping him with his business. And I don't know, his main question was he didn't know how to sell. And of course, if you read my sales book, sales is about influence and connection. It's never about selling product or service or stuff like that. At least that's the way I've ran my businesses. And what was interesting is what ended up coming out of that is his 6th week that we were having coffee over a couple hours once a week. He came in and he looked a little bit afraid and looked a little bit lighter than normal in his complexion. And I'm like, what's going on, man? He's like, have you ever got too much business? And when he said that, I'm like, that's what you want right there, brother. And so from there, he actually inspired me to write the book, to try to help other entrepreneurs. And that's kind of how the story went. I had not planned on writing a sales book. I had run several different companies, and I was always the lead salesperson at any of the companies that I ran. And some of that was because I was the owner. I was the one that had the most belief and the most faith in the business. And but anyways, that's kind of how that rolled out. Actually, The Blueprint of God was going to be my first book, and it ended up coming out in May of this year in bookstores. I ended up publishing it with Morgan James Publishing. And so it's kind of a journey. I've listened to a couple of your podcasts prior where you had the guy who's the guy who's come up with the soap and the aluminum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joshua.
And, it was a pretty cool conversation, but I think we all, based on our own path, we all have a spiritual path that actually is looking for us to manifest into the material world. And there's a lot of different ways to get there as far as the way you live your life. But that's really the reason I wrote The Blueprint of God, was to lay out my story and my journey of what that looks like.
That's interesting. Because I grew up Methodist and I converted to Catholicism, and it wasn't there. I don't know. It was never like taught to me that the gift of God is inside. It was always trying to live your life, like how Jesus did, right? And repent your sins and ask for forgiveness, which is a good way to live. I'm not saying that's not right. But the idea that this higher inner being or inner consciousness or some type of inner power is inside of us. Like I think there's a quote in your book, I read a little bit of it, was like, what was it? Something like, now I just lost my train of thought. Something like your God wraps you around like this power or something like that.
Yeah. So God had a dream and he wrapped your body around it and put you on planet Earth.
Like, that's the most powerful thing I've ever, it's simple. It sounds simple, but it's like powerful. Like, he wrapped you around your dream.
It's interesting. When I started having this, I was raised, as a younger kid in the Baptist church, and then ended up in the charismatic movement. But I had similar probably background as you. It's about do's and don'ts. It's about, making sure you live your life. And a lot of that's true. It is how you treat other people. It is how you love people. It is how you give people grace, whatever. But what I found out is that's more rules based, right? The Father, who's the person who created the whole universe, is actually relationship based first, not rules. And if you think about it, I know you have kids, right? I think I heard in your podcast.
Yep,
so if you think about it, you want to have a relationship with your kids, but if you have to discipline them, it's easier when you have a relationship versus them just looking at you as the rule master. Correct?
Yeah.
And so what I realized in my journey, with the whole God had a dream and wrapped your body around it is kind of my phrase that I use, is that David talks about in Psalms 139, and everybody's heard this, whether they go to church or not, is that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And he makes that statement in that 139 chapter. And he talks about substance. The Old English version says there was a substance put inside of you before you were born. And what ended up happening along my journey, I realized the Father started showing me that substance is my very thumbprint upon every human being before they're born. It's a piece of me, if you will. It's a piece of God that's printed upon your person inside of you, that spiritual power that you can't see. It's on that invisible person, your spirit inside of you, and it's printed there. And within that imprint has all of this wonderful stuff. It has your desires, your destiny, your gifts, your talents, your strengths, all these, the wisdom to live them out, the intentionality, if you will, to actually notice the thing you should be going after. That very intentionality is part of that substance that was put in people before they're ever born. And the only way that you are not qualified is you're not human. So if you're not human, you don't qualify. But it's like when people start realizing, it's one of the things that I work with people on business is I work with identity first, whether it's their corporate identity, but I try to drill down to personal identity within the corporate structure. Because what I found out is that people really have to know who they are and who's around them to have anything be a success. I mean, this is kind of like obvious when you think about it, but the three things that are the most important to people are, and what I've tried to work with people in a business context is and I think I've seen a statement of yours on your website or something. I'm not 100% sure, but I've taught my daughters, I have two daughters, they're both grown now, but when they were in their diapers, I taught them that life is not about what you gain, but about who you become in the process. And becoming is the most important factor. When you become, things are attracted to you that you're called for, that you have desire for. Desire is D-E, of, and sire is father. I grew up on a farm. A sire is a male horse. And it's interesting, the word desire can be broken up in day, which means of, D-E, and sire means father, of the Father. And I believe that when we come, we have this imprint, this blueprint inside of us that has a seal of perfection on it. It has full of the sum of wisdom, and it has the perfection of beauty on the inside of it. And if somehow we can connect to that and live that out, you hear people say you need to live your best life. Well, let me tell you something. If you live that out, you will live your best life. You'll live fully alive, burning and walking out what you're burning for. So.
We're not even 20 minutes into the conversation, and we're getting pretty deep, Don. Yeah, I mean, so 99% of what we are, you can't see.
That's exactly right.
You can't see it. It's like all that it's stuff that's inside of us. It's the goodness. And Shakespeare said, "Know thyself. Know thyself. Know what you're capable of. Know who you are. Who you truly are." Like, we're always looking for the external stuff. Like, we're always looking for the person that we want to, mirror our success by. And it wasn't until like I had this like epiphany. I was having a conversation with a friend. Her name is TT. Shout out to her. And she was like, "Trey, you need to admire yourself. Like, you really need to admire you, like who you are and what you do. Like, it's great that you've had some great conversations with a lot of great people, and you look up to them and their successes, but look at what you're doing." And I don't think a lot of people do. I know I didn't do that. I was just looking at, a lot of the mentors that I've had in this industry and a lot of my friends who are successful business owners. And I'm like looking at them and what they're doing, but I never really took the time to take a step back and really appreciate and honor the work that I put in. And it's been an eye opener for me. I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize the power that they truly have inside themselves. And when you awaken to that, when you become conscious of that, that's when the journey starts. I mean, I don't think your journey, a lot of people want to follow the path. A lot of people want the path to be cut for them. They want to have a plan written down on paper, what to do, step 1 through 100. But when you find out you're on your path, you realize that there is no path. Like, when you're doing something amazing, there's no path, because you're actually creating it yourself.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. A couple things come to mind. People would not struggle with what you just said about being open to honoring yourself and actually looking at the work you put in and looking at how awesome you are. And so here's what my journey, it's kind of led me down, is that I started meditating on that verse, because that's a foundational verse within my book. And what I realized one day, I had an epiphany, revelation, insight, whatever you want to call it, is that, do you realize that you're God's standard? And if you realize that you were God's standard, in other words, you don't have to do anything but be born and you're his standard. And if you realize you're his standard, would you look at yourself differently if you were the standard of God? Think about that. Mm-hmm. He said, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Let me tell you something. When the creator of the universe says you're fearfully and wonderfully made, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. We need to sink down into that a little bit and try to understand. Our human minds are too infinite to grasp that. And what happens is, when I started looking at myself as his standard, in other words, I am his brightness. I have that image imprinted upon me in the likeness of the creator of the universe. Of every beautiful thing you see, you're going to the ocean this weekend and you're going to see what he created with his fingers. And that person created you. And when you start looking at yourself like that, you're like, wow, I'm that. And then the second thing I'd like to point out is, a lot of people think, well, I don't want to be bragging on myself. True humility is restrained strength. Meaning that you are really a rock star at something, but you restrain it when need be, and you can do it. And so a lot of times people look at humility as something where you live down, but humility is actually something where you live up.
Mm-hmm. But people just don't understand. Like, they hear the word humility. I don't know if they fully understand it. When you're so, I don't know. I think the message that I got out of that was, when she said that to me, was like, look at the things that you do. Like, you bust your tail. A lot of people do this. A lot of people are just so focused on what other people do that they kind of, they try to mirror what they do, but they don't really know what they do, if that makes sense. Like, they don't really know. So they bust their butts trying to figure it out, when in reality, they're actually doing more.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually pass them in performance. They actually pass them in the game of life, and they don't even realize it. They're so stuck on the fact that they're looking at them the entire. It's like that Michael Phelps race, right? I don't know if you ever saw that in the Olympics, where he's like, I don't know, I can't remember what year it was, but he won a ton of medals, and that one guy was beating him, and he was looking back at Michael Phelps and kept looking back, and then Michael Phelps came up behind him and won. I feel like we do that too much. We don't look in our own lane. We don't stay in our own lane. So, like, we're too busy looking at other people, and we're not, when we don't focus on our dreams that's wrapped up inside of us. When we don't focus and stay in our lanes, like, we get too busy with that outside noise, and we stop doing the work that we need to do. We start trying to mimic other people's work, and then you got to stay true to yourself. I don't know if that all makes sense, but humility, to me, it's a tough one. It's tough for me, because I always want to say, like, I'm not good enough. Like, yeah, I'm not good enough. Yeah. Or, that's, whatever. Like, I can't take a compliment sometimes, but I'm learning to, take some of that advice and be like truly believe, the greatness that is inside of me. Because, like, for a long time, I couldn't believe that. I didn't want to believe it, because I was like, nah, I still got a lot of work to do. But sometimes you just got to take a step back and really admire what's inside of you. Right.
That's right. That's exactly right. I had a lesson that was taught to me about what you're talking about. It's hard what I've found is that it's hard for achievers, high level achievers. It's actually usually hard for them to accept the praise and the compliments. Now, obviously there's a minority of people who want it, but by and large, what I've found is when I get around people who are champions, and you compliment them, they're a little bit hesitant to receive it. And I remember this. I had this spiritual mentor who I had never met before, but I had really aspired to kind of live up to his standard, for a lack of better words. And he's really a great man, still is today. And I ended up at a meeting where he was at, and I had been to this facility a couple times, so I knew the layout of the facility. And we were at a leadership meeting. And it was just, and all these people there, they're all leaders. All these people are champions. They're world changers. They're the best of the best, basically. Mm-hmm. They're the SEALs. And so there's 1,000 people there. And I'm like, you're talking about intentionality. It's like, before I said a prayer. I want to meet him and just be me and him, eye contact at one time. And so anyways, the meeting went on. He walked off the stage after he's done speaking. He went out the side door. I knew the facility, so I knew where that side door went. So I make my way to the back of the building and walk down to the hallway. And there's 1,000 people there, right? I mean, it's loud, it's everything. And he walks out into the hallway, and I walk out into the hallway, and we're 25 foot apart, face to face. And I walked up to him, and I remember to this day, I walked up to him, and I grabbed him and gave him a hug. And I said, I really appreciate all you've done for a lot of people. And I said a couple other things. And he looked back at me, and you know what he said? He simply said, thank you. And I started realizing that when people give you a compliment that you're a rock star, or you're this or you're that, just simply acknowledge it and say thank you. And that's the way I started living. So when people give me compliments, instead of me feeling like, like a little dog wanting to pee all over himself, I know it's true, but I'm like, I don't want to look like I'm too proud or anything, or whatever that is. I don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. But instead of doing that, just take a breath in and say, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
That's all you have to say.
Now, in the book, you talk about an experience, right? Like, I think you mentioned it earlier, some type of spiritual experience or something like that.
Yep.
Is that right?
It's right. Yeah, it's in the beginning of the book.
So can you explain that a little bit more? Because I'm very interested.
I figured you probably would be interested after listening to a couple of your other podcasts. So I'll give a little bit of backdrop. I do in the book, and it's going to be hard to tell the whole story, but I give you the highlights. Basically, from 2004, I had what I call a spiritual meltdown, and I'll describe it as almost like having a breakdown. I had been part of an organization, a nonprofit organization, where the person who led it and I were on the leadership team, and he was a lifelong mentor. Some things went sideways, nothing illegal, just personal things. And the organization that I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, helping change the world, I found myself having to put my affairs in order and leave. And it really broke me pretty hard on the inside, because I had spent almost 20 years, 18 years of my life in this organization helping build it. And I was one of the primary leaders there. And all I can describe it is like when somebody gets a divorce, or somebody is in a really bad emotional state. Everything in my life felt like it had no meaning anymore, because my life was basically built around that. And I didn't realize at the time how unhealthy that was. We won't really go into that part of the story, but basically it was unhealthy in some of the ways that I had built that. So anyways, get to the good stuff. So I'm having this conversation with God over about a year, and what I call throwing up on him and anybody that would listen about what happened to me and how bad it was, and, playing the role of the victim, basically. And I get in the shower one day, and I'm taking a shower, and the presence of, I believe, the Father came into the shower and mashed me to the floor. Now, when I say mash me, you know how small a shower is to start with. When I say mash me, I felt this heavy weight that I couldn't stand up under. And so I just curled up into the floor of the shower, and the shower's hitting me. And I'm laying there crying, feeling like the tears are crying. I feel like I'm crying so hard that the tears are shooting out sideways. Whether they were or not, I don't know. I don't know how long it lasted. It was probably a half hour. And what I felt for the first time was this love, grace. I don't know what you call it, but there was this presence that was the most accepting love I'd ever felt in my life. And I'd been in church, growing up all my life at different times, and I had seen some different things and seen some miracles and stuff like that, but never anything like this. And so when I finally came to and I got up, I didn't even know how to respond. But being the genius that I was, this is what I said. You'll like this. I said, I had my clothes on a few minutes ago. Why did you do this to me when I had my clothes on? Think about that. You just have the most amazing life-altering encounter of your life, and you say something that stupid. I'm like, come on, dude. I look back on it now. I'm like, if I was God, I was like, I would laugh too. Like, dude. So anyways, this began a process. This was in 2006. And this is when I started getting some of the insights that are in that book. And I started getting some things that I think will set people free about how the Father really is. Because what I found out is once you actually meet the Father yourself, he's much different than you've been told. And what happened to me is through this encounter. I don't know, you're probably not old enough to remember albums, but you probably know what they are. Records and albums, 45s. Yeah. And so when I was going through this process, one day I heard this voice, and I'll use that as I'm telling the story, is that, and I heard this voice say, I'm getting ready to break all of your records and all your rules that you think you have about me. And boy, I tell you what, we went on this journey, and I don't know. I had several of these encounters throughout the year of 2006 where I would almost be incapacitated. I remember I was at Myrtle Beach at this trip I'm getting ready to go on, and I like going out on the beach early. And I'm out there about 8 o'clock in the morning, 7:30, and just enjoying the morning. I'm a morning person, and everybody else is still asleep. And I'm out there, and I was just doing what I do. I just worship. I talk to the Lord as I walk up and down the beach, not about anything specific, just whatever's going on in my life. And I sat down in the chair right there on the beach, and all of a sudden, the presence, that's all I know how to call it, came upon me.
Mhm.
And I started weeping like a baby. And I've got people walking by me, looking at me. And I'm like, and I'm not even caring. I'm like, this is really good. But could we have not done this inside away from everybody, you know? But you don't get to choose those things. I guess what I'd like for people to get out of this, I know there are a lot of people going to listen to it, think, man, you're out there. But I think that the presence of the Creator loves humanity as family and as sons and daughters. And that if we would understand, especially people who have kids, if we would understand that he actually wants to interact with us much like we interact with our children, except on a higher level. And when we start actually seeing ourselves as that, sons of God, if you will, we will live a different life. Our life will have meaning. It will have purpose. You'll have your dreams. You'll have the desires. You'll have the mate, the children, the home, whatever it is, because he's actually into giving people their desires as long as it doesn't hurt them, just like you are. I heard the story, I think one of your podcasts, you had your baby girl behind you in the trash can or something at one of the places, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, but you know what? You want to give her more things that she can understand how, but you're not going to give her the keys to a car when she's 1 year old.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so I believe that the Lord has really gotten kind of a bad rap in some of our religious environments where we tell people it's about the rules. Well, I put it to you this way. What I found out in that year of having many encounters is that it's about relationship first for him. People might make it about the rules. The people that run organizations might make it about the rules. And at some point in time, just like you have rules in your house with your kids about certain things, it does come down to some of those things. But I don't think initially that's what it's about for him. I think it's about relationship. And I think if people, when people, I tell people all the time, let me tell you something. I have people tell me they don't believe in God. I said, well, I can tell you this. You're only one encounter away from believing. That's it. You have one like I did. You might think you're crazy, but you will not believe again. I can tell you that.
Well, that's crazy. Well, you know what? Nothing what you're saying is crazy to me. I mean, I've read a ton of spirituality books. I've read them all. What you're explaining sounds to me like some of the near-death experience books that I've read. Life After Life with Raymond Moody. He's a professor at University of Virginia. He did like 100 case studies of people that had different experiences like that. And you're explaining everything that, like, people that have out-of-body experiences, people that meditate, have been meditating for years and years, have these types of experiences that you're explaining. People that that do the psychedelics, they have these types of experience. But I'm jealous of you, like, because you're just like, you're having them in the shower, you're out on the beach having them. Like, I try every day to have one, because like the description that they talk about in these experiences, just feeling this like oneness, this one with consciousness, the one with God, the one with the universe, and this overwhelming feeling of joy and happy. And there is no sadness. Like a lot of the people, like some of the mediums that I have talked to, some of the people that do hypnosis, past life regressions, everything, they basically say exactly what you're explaining, is that out-of-body experience. Like, we're just, like you said, we're all of, I don't know. I think nobody really knows the answer. I think, you were talking about the rules stuff. I think, back in the day, the society, they created this God that was very stern and very, very scary. Like, they had to have that for whatever their communities are. And like, the thing, obviously the Old Testament, New Testament, they're two different books. I mean, they're just totally different. You got the Old Testament where God is like up there judging everything that you're doing. You got to do this, A through Z to get into heaven. And then the New Testament's like Jesus comes into the book now and asks for forgiveness, and you're forgiven. Right. So it's like, God is love. I think the two things you need to do in this world to reach your full potential as a spirit or a spiritual being or consciousness is to love and forgive. And loving is easier than forgiving. But if you can make that about your life, if you can forgive, if you can forgive, then you automatically become a part of that person. Because I mean, I don't care who it is, what they've done to you. Like you mold yourself with them. You become one with them when you forgive them and absolutely love them, because they can do no harm to you. Like you look at them and you see that soul. I mean, you look at them through their eyes, and you look at them and you look deep in there, and then you see the soul, and then you're in there. I mean, forgiveness. I mean, that's how you become one with everything. And it's tough. I mean, I've had some situations in my life where, you know, people have done me wrong, and the hardest part is forgiving them. But at the end of the day, you free yourself from that bondage, from that weight. I mean, don't go back there, right? Like another thing that I've learned is, you know, God's gift to us is the moment. Like eternity is right now, in this moment. There is eternity. Yeah. But the ego makes us think about the past and the future, because we're worried, we're scared of the future. What if my plan doesn't work? What if I don't know what to do? In the past, it didn't work. In the past, this person did me wrong. So you're either fearing the future or regretting your past. You're never in the moment. And that's where eternity is.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that whole thought. You know, I will go on kind of the record for me in saying I do believe in some rules and structures that are biblical. But for me personally, I have had such an encounter with the Father, I believe myself, that he looks at it about relationship. And then when you love someone, just like we'll just use you, for instance, and your wife, you love your wife, you don't violate your marriage by going out and sleeping with everybody because you love her. It's not so much a rule. It's just comes out of the love. It comes out of the love out of your heart that you don't violate that. And I think that for me, that's what happened to me. For a lack of better words, I fell so much in love with the real God of the universe that I just want to be with him all the time. That's my goal every day when I get up. I want to be like him, and I want to be with him. And you're right. He is love. He's the ultimate in love. And absolutely 100%.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. You got to have rules, man. I can't go out, you get married there. There's basically a covenant you make with your wife and God. Like, I believe in that for sure. Don't go out and kill people and hate and all that. I get that. You got to have those rules. Like there's some things in the Bible that I for sure believe in. Like I believe in Jesus. I believe that he lived and walked this earth. I believe he died for our sins. However, I'm becoming more open-minded about other spiritualities as well, like reincarnation and things like that. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I definitely have a foundation, a Christian foundation. However, I am very open-minded to other people's religions and thoughts. I don't think we should be closed-minded. Like, I don't believe my way is 100% the right way. I think if you look at all religions, they're very similar. They're very, very similar. But I mean, again, it comes down to the basics: love and forgiveness. Love. Like I don't think people really, and I personally believe in reincarnation. I believe that we're here to heal. All the different lives that we've had is to heal and to figure out what every life that we live is to try to figure out what we need to heal. Some people really never fully heal themselves. That's why they keep going back and experiencing this lifetime. And I just think it's cool to think about. I think spirituality is so cool because like people are like, how can we live here multiple times? Like people have asked me this. They're like, how can you believe in that? Like, how can you believe that we live 100 lives? I'm like, dude, we're living this life. Like, what the odds are that you're living and walking this earth, all the probabilities of your great grandparents meeting or your parents meeting, or you being conceived in this time right now. Think about the odds of that. Like, that is a miracle in itself. Is it out of the total realm of reality that you might have lived 4 or 5 different lives? I mean, who knows? But it's cool to believe in. And I just think I love trying to bring people's different perspectives on this show. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm Methodist foundation Catholic. I'm very traditional, going to Sunday school, church, but it's really cool to have conversations about, or even read different literature about, different types of spiritual, awakenings like yourself. Like it's just really cool.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. One of the things that after he scratched and broke all the records, I started living different. And of course, the Blueprint of God is one of the products that's out of that. I actually have a second book that I haven't released yet called I'm not sure what I'm going to title it yet, but one of the titles is called The Wrecking Ball, How God Will Save the Systems of the World. The other one is called The Wisdom of the Serpent, Saving the Systems the Father Loves. And I got this whole revelation. I talk a little bit about it in the Blueprint of God. You have to kind of break it out, but to get it. But I talk a little bit about it. But I got this other book that's completely written. I just I don't know when I'm going to release it. And I started learning the interesting thing about it. And I'll give a little bit of the first chapter. God created systems. And so when you're researching spirituality and checking some of these other things out that you feel like have meaning, regression, whatever they might be, what I found is that all the spiritual systems were set in place before man was created, and that you can tap into those systems and not know what you're tapping into. You can run into God if for lack of better words, and not know that's what you're experiencing. And the articulation for me comes around finding that the Father of the universe actually created all these systems, if you will. They're organic, like organic funnels that have life in them. And he put them on earth for the betterment of humanity as a whole, before man was ever created. And if you tap into these systems, whether you're a Hindu, a Muslim, or a Christian, you can actually feel God and touch God. But I don't think that's the highest experience. I think the highest experience is when you touch him, you get to know his name. Notice what Moses asked God. He said, "Who shall I say sent me?" And God says, "I am." And he's like, "What? You am what?" That's what I would have asked if I was Moses. It's like, "I am that I am." That's my name. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me, Lord, period. I'm like, you didn't give Moses an answer, And so, but here's the deal. It's like when you run into the God of the universe and you don't know his name, you don't get the same depth of relationship, is the way I'd like to say it. But people do it all the time. So I'm cautious with other things that don't lead me to the Father. And I have a simple litmus test. This litmus test is, as long as it doesn't violate anything that I know that's in the scripture, I'm good for the encounter. But when it gets outside of that, then I don't really go down that path, because the only issue with that is there's a demonic realm that we have to be careful of. And this is where I differ from my New Age buddies that think that everything is, they're just gods and they're going out being gods. And I believe that, actually. Look, if you're a son of God, guess what? You're God. Period. I mean, you have the image of the Almighty on the inside of you. If you have his image, are you not him? You're made in his likeness, right? So I get that whole thought process. And I love some of that stuff. I was just reading the Power. It's one of the the secret books, the Law of Attraction and stuff. Because I love reading this stuff. When I'll regress a little bit. In 2004, when I had this meltdown, I don't know if I talk about this in the book. I do talk about me having an encounter with a peak performance coach, but I didn't mention his name. But I'll mention his name for the people on your podcast so they'll know who he is. I had this encounter with Tony Robbins, and he was teaching this truth in this Unleash the Power Within. And I started eating it like a hungry, starving child in India, basically. And as I ate it, I got insights and revelations from the Father of how to apply it to live out my dreams. In other words, it's almost like I studied the information from Tony, but then suddenly I have my own encounter with it. And then when you have your own encounter with it, it becomes your information then. It's not his anymore, right? Or whoever you got it from. And boy, my life, dude, I tell people all the time, people say, especially people in business, they're like, well, I don't want to hear about the spiritual stuff. I want to hear about the business stuff, and I'm like, okay, let me just tell you then, 2006, Our company went before in '04, by 2006, in 2 years, our company went in the top 5% of companies do what we did in America. Top 5. By the time I sold it in 17, we were in the top 1%. We're in the top 1,000 companies that do what we did in the United States of America.
That's crazy.
So let me tell you something. Spirituality does affect your business.
Absolutely, it does.
You know, it makes it, you know, that makes it come alive. I have a what I call a, you know, it's almost like having a come to Jesus meeting. I have a life before '06 and I have a life after '06, and it's two different lives.
Yeah, well, you're talking about like demonic stuff. Like I believe there is darkness in this world. I think there is light. I think a lot of the energy and things like that. Like I think we have this energy inside of us that we can trigger and draw from. And I believe there is darkness. You know, all the, you know, anxiety, depression, and all that kind of stuff. And you know, if you start getting wrapped up in some of the you know, going against some of the rules that we talked about before, I think you'll start bringing some of that darkness into your life, and it'll start dragging you down. But you can always come out of the darkness. I mean, there's always going to be light. Even in the darkness, there is light. You just got to find it and keep pushing towards it. I mean, I think that's, you know, in my opinion, you know, they talk about the Bible, right? Adam and Eve. God is God. God is like the universal consciousness of all. Like he created everything. You don't think that he knew that Adam was going to eat that fruit? Like you can't tell me he didn't know that. He wanted what God's gift is grace. Like that is, he wants us to feel that grace, that forgiveness, that what you felt, that love, that abundance of love. Like that is what God wants us to, and that's how he gets us close. Like he brings us closer to him. Like he knows we're going to screw up. He knows that we're not perfect. Like we're not perfect. There is no perfection, right? Like there is nothing on this earth that is perfect. That was hard for me, being a Catholic, trying to be perfect all the time. And it's just like, you know, that, and being Methodist, like you have to live this certain life, your entire life, for you to go into this kingdom of heaven. And it was hard for me to get with that, because it's like impossible. Just the human nature is, you know, Adam and Eve, for instance, but God's grace, like God wants us to feel that. And some people just don't understand that. They're like, you know, they look at me because I love being spiritual. Like I say that I'm spiritual more so than religious. Yes, I have religious foundations, but they come from that. But I also have to realize that the religion was built, you know, we built that, but God's grace is his gift to us. Like I was talking to you about. I mean, it's to feel that. And I feel that you were feeling that, like, you know, and it comes, like, it's not planned. Like, it's not something that you can work towards, check boxes and you'll receive his grace. It's like all in your due time. Like whenever you feel like you're rock bottom and you decide, you have that choice. Like, you know, Viktor Frankl in his book that I love, Man's Search for Meaning, you know, they take everything away from you. Like you could sit there and swear to God and be like, you know, why are you doing this to me? But until you realize that you have the choice to fight for what you want to, you know, you have that, you always have that choice. You always have that choice to go back towards the light, whatever that light may be for yourself, and always have the option to come back in God's grace.
I love that. So for me, it's, I like living, I talk a little bit about it in my book. I like living, some people call it intentionality. I like living by the highlights of the Father. You know, like a little highlighter, you can take a highlighter pen and highlight something you're reading, and you, like in Viktor Frankl's book, you highlight a sentence that you want to remember to read, go back. I just learned to live by the highlights. Before '06, I was uptight. And what I started realizing was that before '06, I was a human trying to have a spiritual experience. The problem with that is that we're spiritual beings and we're having a human experience.
You know, it's so weird. I just heard that quote today.
Yeah.
Weird. Brian Weiss, I think his name is. He's a therapist. He's a hypnotherapist. Like he's been in, he's friends with Oprah or something like that. He's like world renowned. And I just heard that quote today. Wow, that's amazing.
It's so true, because you're the eternal part of you. And this is what's so cool about desire. Let's get back to some of the desires, because I know your listeners want to have the desires of their heart, right? So in Proverbs chapter 13 is one of the other foundationals of my book. It says, desire realized is like the tree of life, Well, the tree of life is where the eternal fruit's at. When you eat of the tree of life, you taste of eternity. And what I started realizing, this is so cool when you get, and this is where I got the whole idea of God had a dream and wrapped your body around it and put you on planet Earth, is that God's ultimate is for you to live out your desires so you can taste eternity. And not only taste eternity, check this out. When you are living out your superior life, your superior self, you're living that life, right? You actually have fruit of eternity on you that other people can taste and see that he's good. That's what's so cool, man.
I saw what you did there too with your superior life. The thing is about that tree, you gotta do the things to bear that fruit. You gotta plant the seed. You gotta take care of it. You gotta water it. You gotta pull the weeds. You gotta learn how to grow. You gotta give it sunlight. You gotta love it. You gotta forgive it when it doesn't produce the fruit that you want. But at the end of the harvest, you get to taste it, and it's sweet.
The one of the greatest things in my life is to be able to give eternity away to people, because people are so not used to tasting it. And they're like, you said this earlier. You're like, people wonder why I'm, want to be so spiritual. I want to be, I'm a spiritual person. They don't understand it. So let me tell you something. Once you taste eternity, you don't want to stop eating it.
No.
And you want to give it away to others. The greatest gift I have is being able to give my experience to other people, other humans who are still struggling with their humanity of having a spiritual experience. And what I would tell those people is just stop. Start realizing you're a spiritual, eternal being from the Creator, and you're having a human experience, and start living your life from that place of eternity first, instead of past or future. Now, in the moment, right? The eternal moment, that fruit that you get to eat of. And it's just so simple. The cool thing about it is that, I'm going to believe that you're going to have some of your own encounters after we've met, because one of the things the Father told me, he said that if you pick them, I will pick them. And I had this weird encounter with a guy I used to work out with who was not a believer, and he was pretty much agnostic. And he had a life-altering moment in the woods when he was riding his bike out in the woods, because we were running one day, working out, and he was an athlete. His guy's like a SEAL. And he was having this really perplexing problem. He wanted to provide for his family, and the business he was running wasn't providing for it. And he was thinking about moving back to New York, because he's from Connecticut, up close to New York. And he's a smart guy. He took a law test in Virginia and then drove to the New York bar the next day and took the law test there and passed both of them. Jeez. So he's like brilliant, and so he's thinking about going back to New York and becoming a stock trader. And I'm like, why would you go back to New York, man, living here in Raleigh? And he's like, I don't want to. And I said, I'll tell you what, we were running, and this came out of me. This is what I'm talking about, living in the moment. You're talking about living in the moment early, right? We're running, we're jogging, and trying to have a conversation. And all of a sudden, I hear my lips moving and my vocal cords, but I don't have control over them. And this was what I heard come out of my mouth. I heard it the same time he heard it. I said, go out in the woods when you ride your bike today, lay down in the leaves. It was fall here in North Carolina. And I said, ask the Father what you ought to do, and he'll talk to you. And those words came out of my mouth, and I'm like, it shocked me. And as I'm running, I'm like, oh my God, I just said that to him. And of course, then I started being nervous. Like, if you don't talk to him when he goes out of the woods, he's going to think I'm a nut. Guess what? He talked to him.
Really? What did he say?
And he never would tell me what he said.
He never told?
But he said, he texted me at 8:30 that night. We worked out early in the morning. And so it was 8:30 that I get this text. And he's like, I got my answer. And of course, I was like fired up. I'm like, what was the answer, man? What was the answer? And so he said, and I said, well, it's all right. You can't hide from me. We'll be at the gym in the morning. And so we went to the gym, and he said, I got my answer. I went out in the woods and laid down in leaves, and I just have a piece about staying here. And now he's built a multi-million-dollar business here that's just succeeding out the ground. This has been 3 or 4 years ago. So it was just really cool to see eternity affecting other people. Not just your dreams and desires. It's always cool when we get ours,
Yeah.
But isn't life really about giving to others anyways?
Mhm.
Isn't that why you do the podcast?
Absolutely. I do this. I do it twofold. I do it for myself so I can experience conversations like this with you. I do it so that I can give it out to the world for free. And I do it for the knowledge. I do it knowledge for the knowledge, like I go back to school. I'm going back to business school, and I plan on going in something in psychology. And my dream is to get my PhD, and my dream is to blow this podcast up to something that is magnificent and something that people can listen to, use as a resource, and get their fill of, conversations like this. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not doing it for some check mark. I'm doing it because, man, dude, Don, like just being able to connect with people like you and hear your stories, and just like, it's like seeing the Wizard of Oz, right? Like you see the man behind the curtain, you're like, man, you can't unsee that, right?
That's
like
right.
You can't unsee that. It's like, it's like watching a movie now. Like when I go out in public or whatever, socially distanced from afar, and I can see people living their lives by their egos and thinking, I see they're driving their minivans with all their Catholic schools stickers and all the sports and soccer and this and that. Like they got to one up the Joneses next door. And I'm like, man, I used to be like that. Like I used to be like that. Like I had to have like certain things just to be like everybody else. But now like there's just, that's not even it. That's not even it at all. It's like, I want to read your book because I want to have more knowledge. I want to feel what you felt in that shower. Like I want to feel that power, that energy, and I want to learn just for the sake of learning,
Yeah. I'm with you. I have a closet full of books. I have a bookshelf full of books in my office. I got books everywhere. We're getting ready to build a new house. I need a new office so I can have room for my books. I'm an avid.
Let me ask you this real quick. Do you believe that we can
self-help junkie? So.
Do you believe, like you were talking about the law of attraction earlier, do you think we can consciously pull or create things, like create them in the physical, like but just strictly from our consciousness? Like if I repeatedly imagine myself in a situation, or if I just ask for it, do you believe that I can manifest that?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I've seen it too much in my own life. I think that I would put a caveat in it that I've learned as I started walking out my own process of desires and dreams. And then because what I feel like is this, you're familiar with the parable of the talents, where Jesus gave 5, 2, and 1 the story. And so what I realize is everybody doesn't come with the same makeup on earth. And nobody's created equal, by the way. Everybody comes different with different talents and abilities, dreams, strengths, so on and so forth. And what I realize is I teach it like this: like if something burns inside of you, and that desire that you can't get away from, that is an indication of direction from the Creator for me. That's what I call a highlight. I go after that, and then I develop my strengths and talents that usually will meet that. And when they combine, then that's when the manifestation comes. That's when you realize it in the real world. And that's all a dream is. It's faith is described as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. So faith is almost like a blueprint of things not yet seen, but they live inside of you. They live in here. And as you believe for them, so to speak, and walk out your process of perfecting the things you have to perfect. See, I think the Creator's a genius, because there's a part we have to play in the manifestation of our dreams. One of my mentors said, God gives you potential, but he will not complete it for you. So there's a process that we play in this thing. And I think that, yes, 100% you can manifest something from true intentionality when you are in complete alignment with whatever you have to go through to manifest it.
I love that. Don, this has been amazing. I can speak to you all night. How can people connect with you? How can people reach out?
Probably the easiest way is just grab my website. It's donwlong.com. It's just pretty easy, just all lowercase. And I have a way that you can contact me, email me there. And I just I'm here to serve. So if
Awesome. I love that. So last question, pretty powerful. I love where this conversation has gone, and I'm pretty excited about this answer. What do you want your legacy to be?
It's changed over time. I've thought about it a lot. I wanted it different things when I was 25 versus I'm almost 59 now. So I want a lot different things. I think the biggest thing I want to leave is a legacy of being a good friend to people that are closest to me, and also being a great father to my children. And that living and then that affecting the grandchildren, great grandchildren, so on and so forth. It's more of a generational impact is probably the way I would qualify it, as what I want to leave as a legacy. And that's really why I'm writing books. Is I'm not really writing them. I've sold them and I'm selling them, but I really, I have this thought that I'd like for my great grandchildren to know what I thought, because it's written in a book form. And so I think just impacting the world for good, especially at a family level, and then my friends, is probably what I'd like to, that I was a good person and help people out if they needed it. That's probably as simple as it can be.
I love it, Don. Thank you so much for joining the show. This has been an amazing experience.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you as well.
I want to say thank you to Don for coming on the show and hanging out and just crushing this conversation and being vulnerable and talking about, his spirituality and his theories on life. I want to say thank you to the listener, the audience, for downloading this episode. Please follow me wherever you get your podcast from. Leave a rating and a review. It helps me scale the podcast and get this out to those who may need to hear it the most. Follow me on Instagram, tdowns80, and on Twitter at DownsTrey. Check me out on yoursuperiorself.com. Leave me a message. Let me know what you guys are up to. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will talk to you later.